Welcome back to the Hex Drinkers House of Commons, your one-stop shop for all things competitive and at the common rarity. And in this case today, we are looking at things outside of Magic at the common rarity. Chev, we have a special guest. It's Travis joining us to talk about Flesh and Blood.
Yeah,
hey
welcome.
guys, thanks for having me.
Welcome, Travis, Tangible Zarfling.
Is that a D&D thing?
First, what is a Zarfling?
So to summarize it, kind of a whole long story. It is a creature I came up with that is all about positive energy. Goes way into my whole children's book publishing business. But yeah, that's where it stems from. A Zarf is that cardboard sleeve that you have in your to-go cup of coffee. That's the weird word of the day that you now can say that you learned.
Wow, I'll be sure. We're entering holiday season. I'm sure my mom will be upset to see that on the Scrabble board.
Yeah.
It's like what's that technical term for the thing on the end of a shoelace? Remember, everyone learned that. And it was like, yeah,
I don't know.
That, well, now we're moving it to Zarf.
Aglet for you Scrabble players. Aglet.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
We're covering all games this week. So, Travis, if you don't mind, why don't you would you talk a little bit about yourself? You know, we kind of see you as a bit of a bridge between Flesh and Blood and Pauper PDH, kind of having your foot in both worlds. How'd you get into these games?
Yeah, I'm definitely the bridge between these. Is I'm kind of like a well-trodden bridge to different things. I'm not really the competitive type of player of any game. I'm very much an avid casual player, and that leads me to go into different game stores when I visit towns for work or for any reason. I'm near a game store. I just jump in and happen to be where I was playing Commander. One guy was playing Pauper. I found out about that, and then I found out, oh, well, here's a Pauper version of Commander. I got into that, and then I went into another store one time, and someone was playing Flesh and Blood. I thought, well, that's cool. I wonder if there's a Pauper version of Flesh and Blood, and I looked at that, and that was there. So I'm just kind of like the guy that jumps in and asks questions and just enjoys the experience. So that's really what got me into the games. Is not really any kind of a scene other than just genuine curiosity. I like how games bring people together, and I just like sitting down at a table when I'm seeing people play it and ask them not just about the game, but what brought them into playing the game.
Damn. So you do the little bit of interviewing by yourself too.
Yeah, I'm a nosy guy. So
yeah.
That's
fantastic. You know, traveling the world and playing all these different games. We'll let the non-competitiveness slide for now. You know, normally we're an aggressive bunch, but
yeah, there will be times where I'll sabotage myself just to make the experience better. So definitely not the competitive guy.
It definitely sounds like a Zarfling if I've ever heard of one 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
How long have you been playing Pauper Magic as well as Flesh and Blood? Are these newer experiences for you, or have you been going at it for a while?
So Magic, like on and off thing since as old as I'm, high school in the 90s when the game was pretty much just being made available at baseball card, stores, and then didn't get back into it as like a serious interest, aside from checking out, here and there over the years, until I was deployed overseas, and we got a care package from Wizards of the Coast that had like a deployment pack. It's like basically like a two-player. I forget the format that was in there, but my coworker and I asked him if he had played Magic before, and we both remember, from when we played it before. We got into playing the game with this deployment pack, and then we went on Amazon and bought some box of like a whole bunch of random cards where they guarantee, X amount of rare cards and all this stuff, right? And then we just kind of made up our own thing where we were just playing regular Magic with, I guess it would be like Legacy, right? Where we're just playing cards from whatever span of time that have to have, right? And then from there, I was looking at, well, we sure are getting a bunch of commons, and that's why I just, not saying I had an idea without knowing about it, but I was like, maybe it'd be fun to play games where you're using all, because we only have, like I said, so many of the higher rarity cards. So I was making a deck or here or there with mostly commons, and he's like, well, that's not the strongest of decks. I said, yeah, well, I have more cards to choose from. And so then it got to where I started looking at the actual formats when I got back to the States and wanted to play with people in a more social capacity than just my buddy playing one-on-one. And that's how eventually I just got to where I realized that not only we were playing Legacy one-on-one, but then I found out about Commander, and then I realized, I was kind of making up a format of Pauper without realizing it. And so, yeah, it just kind of happened all, I'd say organically, but yeah, just making it up as I went along.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Hearing everyone's kind of getting into Magic stories are always great, because there is that for 99% of people, unless your friends are an established group and they bring you in, for 99% of people, you do start with that sort of messing with a massive bunch of cards. You just find random ones. You're not aware of the formats. The kitchen table Magic that's kind of talked about is the largest user base of MTG. And so hearing how people kind of split into different formats from that is incredibly interesting. I think we went right into janky commander decks, where we knew standard was a thing, realized that was kind of limiting, and then just made horrible 100-card decks. But it's cool to see, noticing the trends, a lot of commons going into common first. And then with Flesh and Blood only being 3 years old, that one has to be a little bit more recent.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I went from, like you said, my coworker and I playing the game, and then we invited a third coworker who had never played the game, and kind of accidentally making Commander with 4-card format, that didn't make any sense to me, saying, okay, I've messed around with Magic enough to have an idea of what this game's like. Let me try a completely new game. And then that's when I saw different options out there. I saw the other, established games. I thought, well, let me try something, completely new. I saw Flesh and Blood on the shelf of a game store. I got a Blitz pack, and I thought, well, this is kind of neat because it's totally different. Whereas the other games I was looking at seemed like a take on Magic. This seemed like a completely new type of a card game. So that's kind of what got me into that and the whole high fantasy, sticking to its as much as I like Magic. It's going all these different directions. I liked how Flesh and Blood was just kind of like, all right, here's our own place with our own lore, one setting, everything. And it felt like it's a more focused game. Well, maybe in 30 years we'll see. Okay.
Going on we're essentially back in Dominaria for now, but time will tell when we get a Transformer hero.
I know, right? Yeah. So who's to say in the future? But for now, it's cool, and both of them have their merits, which is why I like playing both of them. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of got to where I was trying the Blitz deck, just playing that with a couple of people at one game store. I thought, well, let me see. Someone said there's a Discord group, and then I found a nearby game store that had a stronger community, and kind of got into it. But now I'm more trying to learn about the newest set, because with every new set from Flesh and Blood, it kind of throws off the meta intentionally, because they're always tweaking, the meta, trying to make it so it's fair and making for a good scene in the game. So I'm currently trying to figure out what I'm doing with my whole life in Flesh and Blood. Yeah.
Yeah. The newest one's Dynasty, right? It came out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool set. It's what's called an expansion set. So they got their booster sets, and if I ever mess up any terminology, well, you'll have to find someone who's, like I said, a more competitive, knowledgeable player than I. Avid casual player, as I say. There might be times where I'm talking about something and, that's a Magic term, or that's not the word, whatever. But you got your booster sets, and then you got your expansion sets. The booster sets are where you can draft with them. You basically are focused on one or two things, whereas the expansion set is meant to kind of spread the wealth for all things.
Interesting.
So they do that because if you're playing as one hero or one class, and then a booster set comes out that is not focusing on that class, well, then your hero or your class might not get any attention. So you come around to that next expansion set, you're going to get some love from those cards, and that way it kind of keeps everything alive and flourishing.
Yeah. And just a quick aside to our largely Magic audience, some of the best way to consider certain characteristics of Flesh and Blood. is essentially Commander, where you pick a class or hero, and then every card has to either adhere to their class, be it barbarian or wizard or whatever, or be generic in type. As kind of an oversimplification, but when a new set comes out, it might have new cards for a particular set of archetypes. But kind of like color identity, you might not find something that is for your particular commander.
Yeah, that's a good take. As clunky as it may be, trying to fit one shape of a
square
hole.
peg, round hole. But
that's what's fun about it, because you have to relate to the different types of players for them to be enticed enough to try something new. But at the same time, it's got enough unique traits to it that it's going to be something fun for them to learn, where they don't just feel like they're playing a derivative.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would say the fun part about it, with regard to what I just said, is that you have things that are complementary, where you can kind of compare them, but are also completely unique, which is why it's kind of fun to look at both. And when each new set comes out, or a popular take on a format, comes up like we're talking about, you can kind of compare and contrast.
Yeah, definitely.
So Travis, Chev and I have started to get a little bit into Flesh and Blood, but here on the House of Commons, we're worried about the common rarity stuff. So I understand it that there is a format for Flesh and Blood that is essentially the equivalent of Pauper in Magic. Do you think you could walk us through that a little bit, and kind of through that we might also explain a bit more about how Flesh and Blood is functioning?
Yeah. So without even comparing the Magic version yet of what we're talking about, just sticking to Flesh and Blood and Commoner. So you've got your main formats of Flesh and Blood. You got Classic, Constructed, and Blitz. So when you're playing Flesh and Blood, you are assuming the role of a hero. Kind of like I already said, I'm not going into another game, but how you, like you mentioned before, you're assuming one commander in Commander, and a color identity. Like you have, well, in Flesh and Blood, you are assuming the role of a hero, and that hero has a class. And so that hero and their class, they typically will have a certain amount of life, standard 40 across the board for a classic constructed age hero. They'll call the adult hero, right? So then you take that same hero, and most of them will have a young version. And so it'll say Bolton light warrior hero, right? So you have three things. You got the hero is Bolton, you have the warrior is the class, and then you'll have light, which is the talent. And that kind of like gives you like a subclass, if you will. Now you have your classic constructed format uses the adult version of Bolton, the light warrior, adult hero. Blitz uses the young version of Bolton, which only has 20. So then you take that same young hero and apply that to Commoner. So that's how you're starting off. And then with both Blitz and Classic Constructed, you're using any card that Bolton can use, whether it be a warrior card, a light card, a light warrior card, right? Any of those apply because it matches his class, matches his talent, matches the talent class combination. Now you look at Commoner, you can only use any of those cards if they are of a common rarity. So right there, you're eliminating, of course, you got your common cards, you got your rare cards, you got your legendary cards. You can only use, now that means your deck, that also means your weapons and equipment, with an exception. So as you're a warrior, you're taking the role of a fantasy warrior in a game, fighting another warrior. You have one or two weapons and you have equipment. So in Commoner, you are limited to 2 rares of either weapons and or equipment. So with everything else, you're looking at common rarity. The reason why they have 2 rares is using Bolton as an example. There are actually a couple of weapons in the warrior class where you might have 2 hatchets, so they're an axe type of weapon and they're rare. So it'd be kind of lame in my personal opinion if you could only use one of the 2 axes, right? So they have 2 rare options. Otherwise, you're limiting yourself to common. Now, that is pretty much, if someone's looking at Blitz as like a Blitz deck in Flesh and Blood and they're wanting to get into it, it's going to be pretty much tit for tat Blitz with the reduction to the common rarity. So it's really easy to get into. When you look on the fabtcg.com website, they even have their own rule page for it. Like it's an officially, I'll say officially recognized, not supported format, because they don't have a ban list and all that stuff. They don't have like a advisory group looking after it. They're definitely supporting the format. They're making sure that they're putting out a variety of common cards. They just don't have like a, like I'm saying, like a group that's tending to, because they maintain and prune and cultivate this whole ban list for classic, constructed, and blitz, whereas commoners more like it should be, like a little bit of a wild child. So yeah, you're looking, if anyone's trying to get into flesh and blood, you go buy yourself a blitz deck. And then if you want to just try a bunch of different heroes, a lot of fab players, they'll shorthand it, will make commoner decks and just keep them with them. And then they'll introduce people to the blitz format by just giving them a commoner deck. So if anyone's interested in trying the game, I encourage you to just find a local game store. You go on the Fab TCG website to totally plug away, because it's great getting more people involved in the game.
Yeah.
And you go there, and the people that are like well-established players, especially the competitive ones that have bulk, and they just make some extra decks to get new people into it. They'll make commoner decks and just keep them with them. Do the old rubber band. I've seen people like stack a commoner decks all rubber banded together. And then you can sit and you can try out the warrior. You can try out a brute. You can try out all these different classes with no worry about the high cost of building a deck.
Yeah.
Because, with any card game, there's you're gonna accrue some cost to get into a certain format.
Right. So kind of bring it back around. We know we have flesh and blood. You have your warrior, or you have your class hero. You have the equipment you can use. It's all common. And the thing that kind of brought you to flesh and blood in the first place was, of course, it works not very differently, but enough. It is enough different from existing TCGs like Magic or even like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon in the way that it's all combat, and you're a warrior doing stuff as opposed to kind of assembling resources in the same way. Has there been any overlap in strategy you're able to bring between that and something like Pauper? Have you been able to take learnings from one format or a strategy that works in one format and try and convert it to another game? Or do you see these as kind of just two completely separate entities with not a lot of overlap?
No, there's some overlap enough that will entice certain players. And by no means, like I said, am I well-versed enough in all the different... There are strategies. As new of a game as Flesh and Blood is, it's recently hit its 3-year mark, which is good considering it came out 3 years ago with all the stuff we've had in the world in the past 3 years.
Yeah, so, launching in a pandemic is a bold move.
Yeah, that was my litmus test right there when I looked at the game on the shelf, and I thought, well, there's no way they could have came up with this during the onset. There must have been a bunch of planning and for it to get all the way to the shelf here in the States and then have to endure this, for it to then be a success. And me seeing the first Worlds came out like a couple months ago in San Jose, California. So they were really doing a lot of good stuff. But to your question, yeah, there are there's aggro styles. There's I don't even touch the wizard, but the wizard, as you would imagine,
wizard seems a little crazy.
Has mind games about it where I've played against the wizard and I'm playing my turn and the wizard's hitting me and I'm thinking like, yeah, of course this is what a wizard would do, is deal damage to me on my turn. And so yeah, there's fun stuff where the ninja basically does a lot of like if you're imagining how a wizard or a ninja would play, a ninja's playing a lot of rapid attacks. And so yeah, you can look at how you play in one format. Maybe you're playing PDH and you like going wide or you like going tall. There's different characters that do these different things. And so you can kind of look at the different characters as two things. You can look at them as just a fun hero to play as and then learn how to play as them. Or you can read about their play style and decide, okay, I'm more of a brute player myself. Now let me pick what hero of the brute class would I most, prefer playing. So yeah, there are enough unique aspects to the game that entice people, but there's also enough familiarity that will be recognizable.
Yeah, something I would add to that as well at a more meta level, as opposed to an individual hero strategy, is playing even the little Flesh and Blood that I've done. it has made me much more comfortable with interacting with the stack in Magic. Whereas in Flesh and Blood, it's the combat chain. You start a combat, you create a link, and you have different reactions to it. But everything is kind of happening, not necessarily at the same time, but people are reacting to each other, and that is just how the game really works. And so, kind of taking that over to Magic, where a lot of my strategies have been more aggro, have been more creature based, and now playing more and more comfortable with responding to other people's actions with actions of my own has been really helpful in both, as kind of cementing that as an area of play I'm far more comfortable with. And that kind of, it really enforces itself, especially when you get more and more competitive in PDH, where a lot of the biggest turns and actions happen on the stack. So having a background and having a game that could really train you in that, it's the nerdiest CrossFit I can think of, but it really does help.
Oh, yeah, it totally does. I know what you're talking about, because I'll play Flesh and Blood and then I'll go play Commander later, and I'm holding cards back. Whereas, when you're playing Magic and you have like a full hand and you think, oh, I can do all these cool things, and then you have no hand remaining. And like,
Yeah.
It would have been helpful to have a play here, but instead I just did all I could. Whereas you can't do that in Flesh and Blood, and that'll get your hero taken out pretty quickly. So yeah, it actually teaches me a little bit of a bit of patience, I think.
Mm-hmm. Especially because the normal hand size of heroes is 4 cards, I think, in Flesh and Blood. So you have fewer resources that you're dealing with on a regular basis. And then, of course, one of the big things to, again, reach out to the Magic players that might still be a little confused what we're talking about is every card in Flesh and Blood can kind of be used for 3 things. And it makes it that much more thoughtful when you approach, because the card itself can be played for an effect. Every card is mana for other cards, or the card can be used to block attacks from your opponent. So not only are you sitting there with a group of cards thinking, which ones am I going to play on my turn, but which ones am I going to hold up to block with? Which ones do I need to get rid of to play my effects? And then what is the best way to kind of interact with that? And then approach these cards that have multiple uses in a very thoughtful light, that with Magic, where cards usually have only one purpose, you might be a little less used to, I would say.
Yeah, they talk about life being a resource, sometimes in Magic, but it very much is a resource in Flesh and Blood.
Yep.
There's been a time or two where I've purposefully let myself go down to like low single digits, just knowing that if I pull off the move I want to, then I'll come out maybe not victorious, because I don't know how they're going to respond, but advantageous hopefully, and it's worked out, because you're looking at, like you said, do I hold on to this card instead of blocking with it? Because if I don't use it for a block and I instead use it for what I want to do on my turn, well, then it's going to be much better off. But I'm going to have to incur all that much damage. And then, like you said, most have an intellect, which is how you know how many cards to draw, how smart, I guess you want to say, which is semantics, maybe, because the wizard and the brute both have typically 4 intellect, and I'm sitting there scratching my head, but I'll say street smarts. But like they'll have 4, with the exception of 1 currently. Intellect, there are some that have a little bit higher, a little bit lower health, but that's where you have to figure out, like, okay, I'm going to be drawn, and that's the fun thing too. You draw at the end of the turn, so then it makes you think differently. And so when you go from playing one game to the other, it's like, all right, here's where I got to really think about, not just using the other side of my brain, but okay, I can hold on these cards, or I can play them all.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, I think I have one last question I want to ask you, Travis, and that is, what is your current favorite commoner deck that you've kind of put together or play with on a regular basis? What strategy in Flesh and Blood do you find yourself most identifying with? And then at the same time, what is a PDH deck that you see yourself playing the most?
Yeah, so I mean, the fun of both of them is that low cost of entry is. Anyone familiar with PDH is, and then the same fun would be had with the commoner format of Flesh and Blood. So really, when I've been buying some packs from Dynasty and looking at how those cards would interact, I've been wanting to play as not just a warrior, like I mentioned before, because I've been having fun playing brute hero named KO, which is kind of fun because some of them have like a play on words, and so KO is kind of like an all or nothing guy. Or if he hits you, like, you're gonna get KO'd, but you roll dice a lot, and you either whiff it or you go you go hard, you go home. So with Commoner, though, I've been trying to play as an axe warrior. So there's not really a talent axe warrior. It's just kind of like I've decided to build it with axe in mind as the weapon. and there are weapon cards that are specific toward the axe weapon type. So it's like if you use an axe, you get plus whatever, right? So I've been building with the new set an axe warrior deck. So I want to try that one out. I'm going to try it this week if I can get a couple cards from the game store to flesh it out, so to speak. But I want to get into that because I think it's fun with the warrior because there are some on-hit bonuses where if you actually deal damage to the other hero, then you get benefits from that. So I'm currently trying that, and maybe that's similar to my PDH interest of Boros, and really I've just enjoyed Boros.
Yeah, I'd say there's some similarities.
Yeah, Boros might be where some people either turn their head or go to shake my hand, but having the brute that swings hard and the weapon attacks of a warrior, that's more my style. Just I don't like that cerebral blue or wizard stuff. I just want to go beat.
Yeah, no one likes blue, at least on this podcast.
No, they would never.
People are griping on social media about the wizards, just like they gripe about blue and magic. They gripe about wizards and fab. It's fun.
Yeah. Has playing Flesh and Blood made you more of a Voltron player at all? Seeing all the cool equipment that Magic's come up with, obviously way different than your hero weapon, but I feel like after playing with some cool swords and shields, it always makes me want to make a Voltron deck.
So there's actually a mechanologist way of playing that came out with Dynasty, which is really cool, and that's not really a class that I've really considered. But it's fun because it's sort of like playing Voltron because you're basically assembling a mech with your hero in a way where you can that's what the first people were saying when they saw these cards revealed during the spoiler season is, oh, you can have Voltron and Fab. But I would say my correlation between the two would not be so much about Voltron, but more, and this is kind of like how I like playing when I play a Boros style deck is not too wide, but wide enough to where, like, I want to make sure I'm making good use of my weapon. There are times where you play a Flesh and Blood deck where you're barely using your weapons, and then there's times where you're only using weapons. I like using the weapons and having cards in my deck that will benefit from using that weapon. So I definitely like equipment and Magic. I think that's a fun way to play. I don't like to make myself such a strong commander player in terms of all the stuff attached to my commander where I get targeted. I'm what's that, Grixis, which is the red black blue player. It's just like the arch enemy. I don't like to be the arch enemy. I like to lay back in the cut where all of a sudden my equipment can get thrown on some other guy that is not my commander. So I go wide enough to where I can pivot if I need to. So I think that's kind of what I like to do in Flesh and Blood, is not rely entirely on the weapon, but make it to where if I can benefit from using it, well, then that's fun too.
I would say probably my favorite part of Flesh and Blood is that visceral aspect of I am a hero and here is my weapon, and I have just as many weapons as I have hands, and I'm wearing all the right equipment, and I'm not an octopus in boots that make me go fast, which is enjoyable in Magic. But you get too Voltron-y and you're like, all right, I'm carrying enough swords to be a one-piece character and 7 pairs of shoes. And you're like, this doesn't seem quite right.
Chev,
I've been building a wall deck, and I'm looking at this sword in my deck thinking, like, this doesn't make thematic sense. I need to take this out. Like, how is a wall going to carry a sword? I don't know what you guys prefer in terms of your color combinations, or what would each of you say is something that you play in PDH as your go-to? When you're looking at, like, what colors?
I'll break the silence. I like Simic. I like green blue, but I mean we're looking mostly at competitive CPDH, so that's where all the combos are. So that's what I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I usually lean black first and foremost. I really like the damage and using life as a key resource, and then normally that'll lean into green, or recently with red. I really like Rakdos style builds. I have yet to have that transfer over to the PDH. Besides, I really love playing with Azra Oddsmaker, who is incredibly powerful and just such a cool card advantage engine in PDH in colors you rarely see it in. So that is one of my favorite decks to play, hands down.
Yeah, those are both fun. Now, I've not been a fan of Simic because, and I don't play the competitive scene, but that's all about making the tokens and making the weird fractals and the slimes and all the stuff that just scares me because I don't know what to do when they make stuff that just keeps coming back. But I would say check out the Rune Blade. That might be something fun in Flesh and Blood if you like Simic, because that gives you a little bit of flexibility because you are using two different things. You're using your weapon, but then you're also dealing some arcane damage because the Rune Blade is someone that's kind of like a warrior that dabbles in magic. And so they've got a little bit of a wizard trait that they have some arcane damage they can deal, but you're also able to. So me thinking Simic is kind of like you're messing with the other person a little bit. Like that's something that's fun watching Runeblade players do is they're able to swing in one direction or the other using, weapon or arcane damage.
Oh, nice. I'll definitely have to check that out then.
I would say that. You kind of get me with the black resource, like you said before. I already mentioned that. So I think we're already on the same page about that. I have been playing some Orzhov lately. In fact, there's this uncommon commander whose name I cannot recall. I saw on Twitter the other day someone mentioned him. I just don't think I can use them in PDH, but it seemed really cool because they're all about giving legendary creatures 1/1, but they also have Death Touch and Lifelink. So I was looking, I was like, all right, well, he's worthless as a PDH commander, but how fun would it be to use an uncommon commander in EDH, and regular commander, because they'd all discount this lowly uncommon guy.
Yeah, is that Arvad the Cursed? The Dominar, the 5-mana 3/3 Death Touch Lifelink. Other legendary creatures you control get +2/+2. That guy's wild.
He seems like he'd be fun to build around, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Something I've been looking into doing, I've only just started doing, is I've been having fun, just building on my computer. I don't upload and all that stuff for people to judge my mock field decks or anything. But I've got like a OneNote with all my decks that I tailor here and there for fun release in my off time. I like making a deck in PDH that uses the same commander for EDH, and I've only done it with one commander so far where I can shift them back and forth. But I just think that's a fun concept because then you'll sit there with the same. It is the gut Baldur's Gate.
Gotcha.
And
nice.
I forget the name of the background because I'm sitting there and I'm having more fun building it than actually going out and trying it yet. So of course it'll be an awesome deck until someone beats me up with my own fist and makes me punch myself with it. But what I think is fun is swapping the one guy around, because then it'll show people hey, PDH can be fun because now you see a completely different 98 in that regard, set of cards where you can leverage this commander in a different way.
Most definitely.
That's awesome.
That's what I think is fun about Flesh and Blood too, is because you can do the same thing as Magic. You can use these common cards that, as more sets come out, people are talking about like, oh, hey, I'm going to be looking to play these high rarity cards more than these common cards. Well, that's just the nature of trading card game, right? You're going to have these lower rarity cards that aren't given as much attention. But then when you play commoners, I've never really thought about playing with these cards in this way before.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge thing about all these common formats is you have to think of intricacies in card interactions that you don't normally have to, because it's all about each minutia of effect you can get out of a card, as opposed to just, does this murder in an effective way? Does this get you a resource in an effective way? At common, you really have to think, what is the absolute most I can stretch this card? And it really makes you think a little bit more.
Yeah. A lot of nickel and dime.
There's another one I did in EDH, PDH. It's a green-white. I think also came out in Dominaria. That's what kind of got me in the idea, because there's a bunch of uncommon commanders in that set, where it's a Selesnya commander uncommon, where she gives all the basically vanilla creatures bonus. I'm sure you'll know who I'm talking about after you married her.
Yeah, that was from the new Dominaria set. That was like one of the Legends Retold, I think.
It's one of the few that they kind of gave a new lease on life. And so I made two. I've almost got all the cards for the EDH one, but of course that one's, I'm not the type that'll, I'd rather have 5 $1 cards and 1 $5 card, but I've got almost all the cards for the EDH one where I want to go and do the same thing. I've got that one commander and she's got her PDH version and her EDH version. It's fun to me because then they're looking like, I've never even seen this. Whatever old dinosaur with no ability other than filling out old booster draft or something, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
all of a sudden you're using that against them, like having to reach over and look at this regular creature, but now that regular creature's buffed up because of the commander, and now it's a threat. Yeah.
I love that. I love that that mentality. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's my appeal with trading card games is not trying to uh, manipulate anyway, but it's the whole fun aspect of maybe some mental subterfuge where you kind of make the deck in a way where you're not purposefully trying to not look like a threat, but you're making it to where they don't overtly see you as that gracious threat immediately. Like I just look like I'm doing my normal thing, but then they don't realize until I've got my engines going, right? And I love interaction in these games.
Travis, were you talking about Jasmine Boreal of the Seven?
Yeah, that's her. Yeah,
3 mana,
awesome.
2/4, tap to add a green/white. Spend it only to cast creature spells with no abilities, and then creatures you control with no abilities can't be blocked by creatures with abilities. Which in PDH, like we've talked about a few times, whenever you get a solid Anthem effect, you don't get them frequently. So something like this has got to be super strong for building up a board of vanilla creatures, which must not be a drain on the wallet.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the thing. I got so many off. I went on TCG Player and got a whole stack of cards, which I felt bad for the LGS owners having to find all these old cards that probably had dust on them. And who wants this? But yeah, all of a sudden it became a collective threat because, like you said, they all can pack a punch, and in PDH especially. But it's just fun to me because all of a sudden, like I said, the subterfuge of these creatures, it didn't seem like any threat individually, but now all of a sudden they're coming out together, swinging hard. Yeah.
All right, I think that's all the questions we have for you, Travis. But before we let you go, is there anything you'd like to plug? Anything you're working on or want to talk about?
Yeah. So just as I mentioned earlier, and how my personal hobbies and interests kind of carry over into my professional side hustle, I've got a publishing company. I publish primarily children's picture books. So I publish stuff for the primary age reading audience, but I also try to make books for parents and guardians because I talk about how I believe those that are purchasing my books for their kids should be a good reading role model for them. We cannot tell our kids to read while we're on our phones all day. So I try to make sure that our
bit of a double standard there.
Yeah. I tell my son to make his bed, and I got to make sure I make my bed. It can't not do that. So I release books along with my kids' books for the Guardians, and I have children's books and Guardians books. So I've got a PDH handbook. We call it the unofficial handbook of Pauper Dragon Highlander. It's almost complete. We're looking at releasing it sometime next month. Actually, we got the PDF format, the visual script. We're polishing it up with a group on Discord that's well versed in different aspects of PDH. Like I said, I'm not knowledgeable on the competitive scene, nor am I trying to push toward that, because my main interest is just getting people interacting, just like the kind of player I like to be. I like the interaction of trading cards games, and I see the common rarity TCG is the most accessible for people. So that's the reason I'm putting this book out, is because I want to have an accessible handbook for people wanting to get into this accessible format.
Yeah, that's incredible.
We love it. Fighting the good fight.
Yeah. That way we can all maybe eventually go to our LGS and see a copy of this book. And when people ask what the heck is PDH, you can be like, here, get this cheap book about this cheap format and have some cheap fun with all of us. Yeah.
Do all that, grab food, grab a video game, and still be cheaper than a entry-level commander deck.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and then you can sit there and try all the different 2 and 3, and I don't ever mess with any more than 3 color combinations in Magic because I'm not hardcore like that. And then later on, you can try Flesh and Blood, because the other thing I'll say is what's cool about the interaction between a game of Commander and a game of Blitz, or if you go and play the PDH version and the Commoner version, is a pod consisting primarily of 4 players sometimes has an empty seat waiting for a fourth, or maybe people are going and playing to others. You can sit in the meantime, us three are waiting for a fourth, one of us two can play a quick game of Blitz.
Yeah.
You know, the same goes for Common. So the fun thing about it for Magic players is what a lot of people, you know, that are playing both say is you could have a Blitz deck or a Commoner deck with you as you're playing EDH or PDH, and between pods, just throw down a quick game of Fab.
Yeah.
Travis,
Well, that's awesome. Travis, thanks so much for coming on, and it was great getting to talk to you, especially about Flesh and Blood Commoner, because I think that's something, while Julian and I have played some Blitz, we have not done much Commoner yet.
That's step 2.
Yeah, well, take a look. There's some great resources out there. Flesh and Blood DB, the Fabrary, there's a bunch of really cool resources that'll get you a lot of deeper level information about the casual and competitive scenes that I'm able to provide. But yeah, thanks a lot. It's a great time talking to you guys.
You too.
Oh, yeah.
It's been great.
All right. Welcome to our second Commoner interview. We talked to Travis to kind of bridge a lot of the gap between PDH, PDC, and Commoner. And now we've got 2 fantastic brewers from Germany to talk about what it's like to run a Commoner armory, I think it's called, which not a lot of exposure for at least Julian and I. So we're really excited to talk to Dan and David about what it's been like to kind of get a community started over there. So first, guys, welcome. If you wouldn't mind kind of introducing yourselves for a minute, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having us. I'm John, also known as the Crazy Brew on Twitter and YouTube. And yeah, my journey with Flesh and Blood started in late 2021 when Welcome to Wraith first was released in Germany. And I got wind about the game on YouTube, for example, through Alpha Investments. And I and a friend, we thought, like, why not just checking it out? And we both bought a box of Welcome to Wraith and played a sealed at home during the height of the pandemic. And it was a fresh new experience that blew me completely away because it was such an innovative card gaming system that I was just excited to play it. But life came in the way, and I lost interest at first. But then I got in touch with the game again with the release of Monarch in 2022, and that was the moment where it really clicked with me, and I fell totally in love with the game and never looked back. And it's the same story with David.
Hi, my name's David. I'm not on Twitter, not on YouTube, but whatever. I've started with John in 2021 with Monarch because I saw him on my local WhatsApp and saw that he posted a photo of his Blitz decks, and I was like, "Hold up! So you're playing Flesh and Blood as well?" And he was like, "So you're playing Flesh and Blood as well?" Yeah. Alrighty, let's do this. And well, that's where the Magic started. Yeah. We knew each other from Magic tournaments prior, so we already had a established. We knew that we could work together well, and yeah, the rest is history.
We are Flesh and Blood brothers since.
Yeah. Brothers in cardboard.
I love it. I love it.
If we didn't already have a name for our podcast, we might have to steal that one because Brothers in Cardboard is a pretty solid anything.
To be honest, it's yours to take.
The branding is endless. The branding is truly endless. So,
Julian, do you want to hop on the?
Yeah. So you guys are obviously Flesh and Blood fans, but specifically, we're talking to you about the Commoner format, which is the all commons format that they've introduced and is moderately supported, at least, or at least recognized, right? So what got you from playing Flesh and Blood in general to being enthusiasts of the Commoner format?
Who should answer? David, you go first.
Sure. I mean, I may start. When we started Flesh and Blood, we did like everyone else. We just bought packs, we built decks, brewed around, and we also bought expensive legendaries. Very expensive legendaries, and we had a lot of fun with them, and playing in our local group in our local town. But we only had for people armory. And we were thinking to ourselves, what can we do about it? We need to acquire more people. How can we do this? Let's start a learn to play event. There are welcome decks with the Ira hero, but those are not really tournament legal decks because you have 40 card decks with 3 copies, or 30 card decks with 3 copies each of card, which is not legal in neither Blitz nor CC, or which is classic constructed, the regular 60 card deck format. So we thought, why not just Commoner? Both of us we have so much bulk around. Let's just throw together some of the decks and let's just invite people over. And I myself did build around 30 Commoner decks from the bulk that I had, which were not just going maybe to Magic. It's not just Grizzly Bears. You really have strong cards in the basically all Commoner decks consisted almost cards with the power level of Lightning Bolt rather than Grizzly Bear. So it was hell of a fun, and we kind of quadrupled our attendee for the armories, for the local armory, with one event. And we gave the decks out to the players, and we're like, just come back the next weeks. We will start our armories, our local tournaments, our local weekly tournaments with the Commoner decks. So you get your deck for free. You come back, you play with us. Everyone wins. And it got so much attention because people were enjoying the gameplay. They didn't have to bring anything to the table prior, just time and enthusiasm. And it just worked out perfect.
Yeah, that was an amazing experience. As David said, we were just a very small group of local players, and it was hard to get the armories fired. And the success that we had with the free decks that we gave out was just immense. And we didn't play a single game of Commoner before. We just thought we need an incentive to get people in, and what better incentive that could you have than the event is for free and you get free stuff on top.
That's really cool to hear from that perspective, because a lot of the times, at least with Julian's in my experience with Pauper or PDH, the more Magic formats, yes, they are more accessible, and that is one of the big points that we hit the drum with. Or yes, they are cheaper to build, but we're normally coming from a place of having really strong decks and then joining that community. But we rarely see the community grows because it's more accessible. And so kind of hearing of you guys' story of trying it one way, didn't work, try it with cheap cards and free access, and so many more people are involved. It's very clearly that Commoner was the success there. Don't need a control group for that one.
Yeah, it is. I mean, one of the big criticism towards Flesh and Blood is that if you want to play competitively or at the highest level, you need to unlock your hero basically through the use of legendary equipment that drops just like in every fourth display one, like every fourth box there's one legendary or something like that. Wow. It's getting better now. They are adjusting the drop rates for legendaries because you have, for example, rainbow foil legendaries that appear more often than, for example, those the so-called cold foil legendaries, which are the same legendaries but with a different foiling and more rare. But so what we learned with Commoner when we built the decks and taught people the decks is that, and this is something that David is often saying, like every Flesh and Blood deck, their bread and butter consists of very strong common cards. And if you scratch the Majestics and Legendaries and Rares from a deck, you still have a strong basis of really good common cards with which you can have the full Flesh and Blood competitive play experience with the fraction of the cost, which lowers the barrier of entry so low that we can open the door for everyone who's interested with no problems.
That's incredible.
I love that.
So, since we started, we have established some Blitz games as well, and one of our attendees brought his Commoner Dash Mechanologist deck, and he just stomped regular blitz decks because it is Dash can play with better cards. It has a better armor suit, sure, but she doesn't need the majestics or the rares because the commons are just so powerful. Classes like the warrior, you can't play him without commons because things like hit and run that give you go again, or things like Blade Runner that let Kasai do stupid things. Without those cards, those decks could not perform at all, and those cost nothing, literally nothing.
We recently in the competitive Pauper Commander world, we had an upset like that where there was a competitive Commander tournament. It was $100 deck limit, and someone that we know goes by the name Puzzlebox online. He came in and stomped with a Pauper deck, so 99 commons and then an uncommon Commander, and was able to kind of get it with a really grindy blue-green loop that infinite mana into the infinite shenanigans. But it is crazy, like when you get the right commons, what you can kind of do. So I know that, or I think I know that the commoner format in Flesh and Blood, you have your deck of all commons, but then of course it's all the heroes are unlocked, right? Since you can do kind of any hero you want that's been previously printed.
That's not entirely true.
Okay.
We have majestic only heroes up to the rare rarity are allowed to play, because in Commoner, unlike in Pauper, you have 2 rare cards that you can play in your Commoner deck, and that are specifically only rare and equipment that you can play as a rare. Is that right, David?
You mean weapon and equipment? But yes. You have in your Commoner deck 1 hero that can be of rare or token rarity, and you have 11 equipments and or weapons that you can put into your sideboard deck. Because you have a 40-card deck like in the Blitz format, which you can't change between match. Your equipment suit, however, you can change. So you can bring in null runes against those pesky wizards that come in with arcane damage, or you bring in a different weapon for a specific matchup. But you can only bring 2 equipments and or weapons that are of the rare rarity. Everything else has to be common, and every card in your 40-card deck has to be common.
Okay.
And we have in Crucible of Worlds and in Dynasty, both expansion sets, we had legendary heroes coming in. So heroes of the legendary rarity, and those you cannot play, for example, in Commoner.
So no Dromai dragons and all that stuff is happening at a Commoner table.
Exactly.
Correct.
Yes.
That's probably for the best.
Dromai has to play with the Ashwings. Ashwings exclusively at the moment. Yes.
Yeah. Ashwings and all of those strong generic phantasm attacks that illusionists have access to.
Yeah.
Which are amazingly strong in Pauper because no one is playing cards like Command and Conquer that could pop a phantasm.
Right,
with
the regular
power.
kind of protection against it.
Yeah. Yeah. You just are sitting there and being like, oh, so you're attacking me for 8 with 3 resources. Well, thank you, I guess.
Please, sir, can I have another?
You're allowing me to play another game quickly.
Basically, the more games, the merrier, I guess.
Yeah. So of the available heroes in Commoner, do you guys have a favorite deck or one strategy deck you kind of go to more frequently than another?
For me, it's Reiner, the Brute, the OG Brute, because it is easy to play, and it's a solid deck in Commoner. You are missing a lot of very important pieces that Reiner has in his toolkit, like for example Bloodrush Bellow, which is an insane card. But even with common cards, if you build your deck just right, you still can abuse Reiner's Intimidate ability to banish, or in Magic terms, exile the hand cards of your opponent until the end of your turn, and just swing for insane damage and bonk your opponent into the banished into the Shadow Realm, which is just a lot of fun. I enjoy Brute in every format.
That's awesome.
He's a true brute.
Yes.
Although I have to say, there are many heroes that I like in Commoner. But if I would want to go competitive, I would go with the warrior. Either with Kasai, with the 2 Centauri sabers, because all of the good common warrior go again cards like Hit and Run or like Blade Runner are commons, so you don't need them. You just need 2 cards, one of the aforementioned and 1 blue pitch, or in Kasai's case, even a yellow pitch would be sufficient to attack for minimum of 4 damage, up to a damage of 3 for the first swing, plus 6 for the second swing, up to 9 damage, basically. Which is in a 20 life account format maximum.
That adds up.
That adds up very, very quickly. So, if you go competitive, Warrior is definitely worth a look. Otherwise, play whatever you want. The wizards, for example, are amazingly funny because you don't have access to all the good equipment. So you can't just say, haha, lol, I'm going to burn away all your HP in 1 round because I just drew the complete nut hand. You have to work for your win, and you need to get creative during deck building, which is the other part that makes Commoner so great. Because even though it is only commons, and even though we are only at the which set are we on now? It's the 7th. Should be 7th set.
Dynasty came out, and then there was that. What is it like?
Dynasty should be 7.
Yeah.
Well, we had
sounds right.
Yeah, it should
we had
be right.
Welcome WTR, Arcane Rising, Crucible, Monarch, Tales, Everfest, Uprising, Dynasty. Yeah, 8. We have 8 sets until now. The variety of decks that you could build for each class is still so great that you... I mean, you could technically build a wizard and only build physical attacks with him. Would it be good? Probably not. But it would completely...
But you have the ability.
Yeah, you have the ability and will blow out your opponent. Because he will be like, you do what now? So there's so many possibilities, and not even talking about cards that might come, or heroes and classes that might come with the game. It's just if you want to go deep down the rabbit hole, the amount of possibility is just...
Yeah.
I love to hear that. I was actually going to ask a bit about deck diversity, because not only we're only playing with commons, right? It's a relatively new game, so the card pool itself is not that large, and then especially if you're talking what's really viable if you like actually want to win. But I love to hear that you can already do so much, and it's only going to expand obviously as we get new sets. So that's awesome to hear.
Yep, that's true. I mean, the thing is, you cannot make a warrior into a wizard. You do not have that kind of freedom. However, something that I've learned during my time in Flesh and Blood is you can still within the card pool give your own expression to your hero, depending on the decisions that you make in deck building. And just the slightest change may leads to the deck feeling completely different. And so every decision in deck building really matters in Flesh and Blood. And and also something that I want to say is, with every set we get either new classes or new class support that bring a new wind into the existing classes. Now with Dynasty, almost every class got new support, and the best example is Dash, because if you give Dash just 1 or 2 new cards, the viability of Dash is again catches up with the rest of the other classes and is through the roof. currently Dash is considered to be one, if not the best deck in the formats overall, just with the card support of Dynasty. And so every set has a big impact on that game, and it's just a brewer's paradise.
Oh, love it, love it.
And I mean, if you want to go full meme, you can always play Data Doll with the new Dynasty release of blue and yellow pitch hyperdrivers. She actually got a bit better. Maybe not in Commoner, because you don't have the Mechanoid, but in general.
Yeah.
Those are those are both mechanologists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So to give a little background as well, Julian's and my exposure to Flesh and Blood so far has been playing with the Blitz decks we can buy off the shelf. I've really gotten into I think, is it Oldham? Was the one that
very
I got,
good.
and big smashy stick and a giant grandfather Norse god seemed pretty sweet. And we were playing with those while watching the San Jose Worlds a little bit, and that was like that's what led to the kind of inspiration for this podcast, is knowing that there's other formats out there and wanting to and games really and learn more about them. But so speaking a little bit to the fact that you can in fact play with different types of cardboard. Previously to us kind of starting recording, you guys had said how you knew each other from Magic events. You have played Magic for many years, and I remember John saying that once you kind of started Flesh and Blood, you never looked back. So what were the biggest changes, and what has kept you coming back to Flesh and Blood while maybe taking a breather from Magic and Magic's ecosystem?
Yeah, sure. So I've played Magic the Gathering actively for a decade. Commander and Modern, especially.
Wow.
And when the pandemic hit, the local scene in Magic dried up a little bit. In-person play obviously wasn't possible, and webcam play wasn't as established at that time. And me, being someone who is very addicted to card games, wanted a new experience. And Flesh and Blood came out in Germany, and Welcome to Wraith was available, the unlimited version, sadly. And we got a box, and
Those
I tried
white borders.
with a friend. Not white border. It's just black border reprints of the
Gotcha.
the usual set. And what I and a friend, my friend Tishy, we started playing Sealed. We just opened up a YouTube video where it was explained how to play Flesh and Blood, and we took 6 packs of Welcome to Wraith, opened it up, looked at the cards, just jammed them together, and just tried our first steps in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I've played Magic the Gathering for a long time. Netrunner. I was super invested in Keyforge, and I loved all those games, but Flesh and Blood is such a unique system, unlike anything that I have ever played before, that completely blew away. Simply because you have that role-playing element of choosing a hero of a certain class. You equip him with epic equipment that is available for you to use, just to block with them or use their special abilities, swing your weapon, and smash your opponent with immense attacks.
Mm-hmm.
That role-playing element is fantastic. You are so invested in your hero, you can just express yourself by just finding the class that you love and the hero that you identify with. And on the gameplay side, one thing stood out for me the most, and that is the resource system. In Magic, if you draw too many lands, you have nothing to play. If you're not drawing enough lands, you cannot play anything. And that leads, as we all know, to non-games that we all had. But in Flesh and Blood, because the fact that every card has a resource cost and also the ability to be pitched to generate resource to pay the cost of other cards, you can always do something. You will never look at your hand and say you can do nothing. you can block with cards, you can attack with cards, you can use cards to pay for other cards. And this flexibility leads to super interactive games where everyone is involved in every minute of the game. And the next thing that blew my mind completely was the next level. That is the pitch system. As I said, you can pitch your cards to pay for other cards. And the cards that you pitched to generate resources will be put under your deck at the end of your turn. And because you draw up to the full hand size of 4 cards usually at the end of your turn, you will eventually see the cards that you pitched at the start of your game, they are landing back into your hand because you naturally draw them. So if you are playing the long game and you know that, you can strategically pitch a certain combination of cards under your deck. So you draw them. So you draw, for example, the right combination of cards at the exact moment that you need them, and unleash a combo on your opponent to win the game. Just this level of foresight that you need for the game, this ability that you need to remember your own pitch, but also track the pitch of your opponent to know what they might have in their hand in the later stages of the game, is just I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about this. It's just next level.
Yeah, I think that is something that I've really enjoyed with my limited experience with the game so far, is just how every card has minimum 3 ways you can use it, whether it's for resource, whether it's for blocking or attacking. And so you never have a dead draw, and you're also seeing so much more of your deck, where one of the big things in Magic is you build your 60 card deck minimum or your 100 card deck in the Commander formats, and you're not going to see 80% of those cards over the course of a game, most likely. So having a much better idea of everything in your deck, because you get to see everything, feels super fun. Because like you said earlier, that makes every change much more impactful when you know you're going to kind of see it over the course of that gameplay.
Yes, exactly. It's fantastic to, if you build your deck, as you said, you see most of your deck. So you have the feeling that you express all of the deck building energy that you put into your deck in the course of the game and see what you created, and that's just amazing.
Yeah. Now, David, I want to get your answer, but first we need to know the name of your cat. So David's had an orange cat popping onto his lap, and I'm very interested.
Well, that fella was Luca. He's
Luca?
my absolute son. And the other one, Sakura, is just picking up on me right now.
Practicing their hunting skills.
But she's also adorable.
Oh, incredible.
But she doesn't. Maybe first to the brewing part. Jan is not called the Crazy Brewer for nothing. You can brew so many spicy things, so many ridiculous combos that are currently will see no play at all, but they might in the future, because we are still so limited. We still haven't explored the PvE format that is supposed to drop here, hopefully.
Okay.
Which will be, hopefully, we don't know, something along the lines of the World of Warcraft raid system, or something completely different, something completely cooperative. Who knows? We don't know. Only LSS knows, and they don't want to tell us until it is finished. But we are so hyped. Everyone is so hyped about this as a casual, let's sit together on Friday night with some friends who play Magic, who never played Flesh and Blood, have a good game. But the general gameplay of 1v1, which is, Pauper, modern, standard, everything is a 1v1. And in Flesh and Blood, this can't be truer, because you have 2 heroes sitting across from each other on the table, staring each other down, and then brutally murdering each other with weapons and attacks spells. It's amazing. The best part about Flesh and Blood and Flesh and Blood's gameplay for me is the fact that you have no stop action. You start the game and you are already completely in, because both players draw up to 4 cards. The first player does his turn. After his turn, both players draw up to 4 cards, and then only the player whose active turn it is right now draws up to 4. So the defending player has to decide, okay, I want to use 2 of my cards to block and 2 of my cards to engage. Or my hand is amazing and I can do 30 damage with my 4-card hand. But I have to take everything that my opponent throws at. And if your opponent in that second has the perfect hand as well, yeah, guess then you're shit out of luck and you have to tank almost everything they throw at you until the point when they say, okay, and now attack you for lethal. You're like, oh, god damn it, I had you. But now I have to block because otherwise I will die.
Yeah.
The rule, the only life change that matters is the one from 1 life to 0. Can't be truer and fresh. Life is a resource. And this game of tempo starts turn 1 and ends after one of the players is. And that is just amazing. You can stack your pitch with heroes like Oldham. You have to, because you are slow. You are very slow. And after you've seen your deck once or twice, you start punching through your opponent because they have no resources left, and you can just completely demolish. Other heroes like Fi or most of the ninjas are just, I'm going to throw everything in your direction, and I hope that you don't stand after I'm done and have no. It is amazing. It just makes so much fun. And I love Magic. I loved Magic for 20 years now. It will always be the trading card game.
Right.
But the part of I draw 7, I got no lands, I need to mulligan. I draw up again, I still got no lands. I draw up again, I got 4 lands. Well, thank you, I guess. But it just it hurts so much. In Flesh and Blood, there's not even a mulligan. The only way you could mulligan is by saying, I go second, you please attack me, I'll block with all cards I don't want, keep the ones that I want, and then draw up to full. That's about it.
And there's even the mind game that if you know that your opponent wants that you attack him, so he can block with the bad cards in his hand and basically filter his hand, you just say, "I arsenal my card and pass," and you don't get to mulligan at all. It's mulligan
Wow.
Dang, I didn't even think of that part.
David, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you did have a bit of a spicy take also before we were recording about the various common formats. Are you willing to share that with an audience?
I don't know the exact words that I used, but I think it was something along the lines of Commoner is superior to Pauper.
Oh! Now those are some fighting
Hear
words.
me out. Hear me out on this. Hear me out on this. No, that might be a bit harsh, but I think that the Commoner format brings more to the table than the Pauper format. I have played some Pauper. I'm not that into it, but I know that there are ridiculous combos that you can pull off with Pauper.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to pull them off, you need to go back into legacy card pools, and that can get quite expensive. As far as I know. This is just not the case with Flesh and Blood. Plus, in Flesh and Blood, you can take a deck that is played in the Blitz format because it's more similar to the Commoner format. Exchange all the rares and majestics from the deck. Exchange all the legendaries from your equipment pool against something that still does thing, but is weaker than its rarer counterpart, and still have an amazing game. You never feel like you are playing with underpowered 2/2 Grizzly Bears for 2. You only play Lightning. You only play the Brainstorm, for example. Everything is bonkers strong. 90% of the backbone of every Flesh and Blood deck, no matter the format, are the commons. you can't play Flesh and Blood without. In Magic, commons are sometimes an auto-include because they are so good. Otherwise, the Pauper form probably would make that much sense. But the fact that there is nothing that is a dead card, and even cards that are not played currently, there might come a hero that will play those cards and completely go to the moon with it. My favorite example of this is the winning deck of the world this year. Icelander brought to the table a card from Welcome to Rave called Wounded Bull. Wounded Bull is a card that costs 3 and attacks for 7. It attacks for 8 if you have less HP than your opponent. So in general, it is you have a blue pitch card in your hand and Wounded Bull, and if you have less HP than your opponent, then you can attack with basically 2 card hand for 8, which is above average.
Right.
Which is very above average. Icelander can do this turn 0 because she starts with a lower life total than most classic constructed heroes, which is 36 against 40. So she can internally use this card to her advantage. Wounded Bull isn't a good card, but it is in Icelander. And that's the same principle applies to so many other cards. We have some cards that saw no play at all in the competitive formats, but then a new hero came out that could utilize them, and that's the beauty of it. You have so much design space still, and even to this day, I can't think of a card where I say this card is bullshit. Don't play that card. That card is useless. Don't play it. If you would ask me, would you play a Grizzly Bear in a green Magic deck? I would say, hell no. Unless I played Bear Tribal. Then, yes, then I would play Grizzly Bear. Sure. But if you would tell me, could you play Come to Fight in a Flesh and Blood deck? I would say, hell yeah. There's a rune play called Viscerai that will just say, ooh, 1 resource, a non-attack action that makes A, my hero ability active, and B, empowers my next attack. Yes, please. I want that. So it is just you have only powerhouse in the commoner format, and no duds.
Yeah, I think maybe that's also keying into the idea of vanilla creatures being something that really isn't. They do things in Magic, right? They'll go onto the board and they can attack later. But in Flesh and Blood, where every card is essentially an action or a spell, each one is moving the gameplay forward in one direction or another, whether you're using it to block or using it to set up an attack or something like that. So that's a really good analysis.
Yeah,
exactly.
I also think that Flesh and Blood has some of the benefits of TCGs developing over the last,
on the last 20 years.
30 years. We've kind of moved through the stage where, if you think of like very early Magic cards or even like early Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh cards, there was a lot of just chaff where they were just like kind of figuring things out, and Flesh and Blood is just like, no, we're just getting to the good stuff, which is always nice as well.
Yeah, and just circling back to our common armories. So as David said, we opened a lot of product in the short time that we are playing, and we bought cases upon cases upon cases of Flesh and Blood product, and those big white boxes with commons that we have, it's a gold mine. It's a gold mine, simply as that. I always go back to find new cards to brew new decks with that. Or, as we are doing again for our next Learn to Play event, which is coming before the release of the next Flesh and Blood set, this is our resource to grow our community again. So we are back at building decks, and David is showing his next haul of commoner decks that he's building right now. He's a real trooper. Like, he puts time in it.
Oh my
the
goodness.
stacks of decks that he built and that we are giving out. This is, what he's holding right there. This is for our next Learn to Play event, in which we give people the opportunity to basically choose their very first Pokemon on their journey of
That's so cool. Yeah.
becoming the next hero of Wraith, which is the word that Flesh and Blood is playing in. And
That's incredible.
And watching the new players choosing their very first deck after we explained them the classes is always great, because they are already coming primed, right? If you're if you are playing Magic, if you're playing any kind of role-playing game, you like to be a ranger, you like to be a necromancer, you like to be a tank in any shape or form. And if we ask them what they like in terms of gameplay or from their role-playing experiences, we can give them a curated experience of, hey, these are your options, choose wisely. And oftentimes they chose right. For example, we had a new player who chose to play Azalea, the OG Ranger of Flesh and Blood, and he sticks with her to this day and really tries to nail down the gameplay of Azalea and run with her. That is just impressive.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Well, I think we're coming to the end of the planned questions. Julian, do you have any more things you want to ask before we turn it back to these guys one final time?
I guess one question, but also maybe another way for you guys to shamelessly plug a little bit. How do you get the word out? How do you attract people to come in and play at your Learn to Play events? I think you guys do like weekly events as well. How has that experience been, and what are you guys doing to kind of really bolster your community? Because I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job.
Yeah,
seriously.
I can elaborate on that, and that is the frame of the Learn to Play event is basically a full-blown marketing campaign. I'm a marketing manager at Trade, and working for a gaming company. And
wow.
Nice.
When we wanted to start those Learn to Play events, I was like, okay, but if we're making a Learn to Play event, we have to properly advertise it so that people are actually aware that there is an opportunity to learn a new game. And so I was managing the organization of the Learn to Play event. We were working closely together with the store owner, who graciously opened up his place to host this event. And we set a date. I created a classic Facebook event. I set up an advertisement campaign, actually, and created posters, assets to advertise it via WhatsApp groups, via our German national Flesh and Blood Discord, and we actually tried to make use of every channel that is available to us to get the word out in with enough lead time so that people can actually make time for this event, right? Because everyone is busy nowadays, and you cannot say, hey, tomorrow is an event, do you come?
Right. They need to plan it. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's why I started advertising the event 3 weeks ahead of time, so that we reach as much people as possible early enough so they can just make time for it and actually come. But I tell you what was the most effective marketing channel, and that was a 20-cent poster that I printed out at the next copy shop and hung up in the store, because people are frequenting this. You cannot imagine how many people frequent a game store that is in the city center throughout 3 weeks, and people will just see a big ass poster hanging around saying you get free stuff if you want to learn this game. And I tried to ask everyone who attended this event how they got wind of it, and they said there was a poster hanging, and it was like, yeah, why not? That was actually the most effective piece. And we do it again for the next event. Again, with enough lead time, we again stress every channel that we have available, and try to get again completely new people in for the next event.
You heard it here, folks.
But please don't talk yourself down, because you did an amazing job creating this post. Because this poster by now is shared across the whole Germany Flesh and Blood Discord, and everyone across every major city in Germany is using Jan's poster by now. So if you're in Germany or Germany based and you walk around and see a Want to Learn Flesh and Blood poster, there's a good chance that John designed it.
Yeah, thank you. We didn't imagine. Absolutely, yes. We didn't imagine that it would just make draw these big circles. Like, I didn't just want to make this event and make it successful. I wanted to share this I shared the whole event in the German Flesh and Blood Discord, and we have certain places in Germany that were struggling to build up their community, and that actually inspired them to make the same event, and maybe also give out Commoner decks and start with Commoner. Because this event grew such roots, I was amazed that in other places people got in touch with a fantastic game because of the simple initiative that two dudes took in a hometown just to grow their own community. So, and another thing, and I'm sorry if I'm taking all the time up here, is another impressive thing was friends. So people that you brought in bring other people in, and these people bring their friends with them as well. So it has a
sort of ripple effect.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Legitimately inspiring. Absolutely amazing. You heard it here, folks. If you want to make it happen for Flesh and Blood or for Pauper or for whatever you're doing, all you gotta do is just make a nice poster. That's it. And also put in the work and the time and have the
would also help,
the effort. But oh, I love
that's
it.
awesome. I think that kind of comes to the end of our time. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on to this. It was great to learn about the creation of the armory, how accessible the commoner format is for Flesh and Blood, and how it still maintains the power level of the decks. And I think I love the technical discussion we were able to get into, how since each card has a multiple use cases, you never feel like it's a dead draw. And David's completely accurate statement that he'll stand by 100% that Pauper is in fact inferior to Commoner. So good thing he doesn't have a social media presence, but
Stop starting beef, Chev.
And I will probably by now I won't start one. So don't at me.
For safety, for his own personal safety.
Yeah.
Excellent. Did you guys want to? Well, I know, David, you said you're not on social media. Yeah, John, did you want to plug your socials or whatever one more time for the listeners?
Definitely. I'm known as the Crazy Brewer on Twitter. You might have seen me if you're running around in Twitter Flesh and Blood circles. You find me at the Crazy Brew, the underscore crazy underscore brew, and the same handle is available for YouTube, where you can find my YouTube channel. I wish I had more time to put into my YouTube channel, but if you just have the time, leave a like and subscribe on my channel. That would be most appreciated.
I can only recommend his channel because he has, as I said, the spiciest brews that you can imagine.
Ooh.
And some things are bounced off between the two of us when we were driving back from some bigger tournaments, and then you come just up with, you can cash in away your weapon to generate silver. What do you do with the silver? Nothing yet, but there might be a time, and then the loop starts. So I don't want to spoil any videos, but take a look. It's good.
All right, I think that about sums it up. Thanks again, guys, for agreeing to this.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. It was a pleasure.
Couldn't have said it better.
Well, Chev, that was a fun little look into a Pauper-esque format and a separate TCG, Flesh and Blood.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. Also have to thank, the community for being so open and willing to talk to us as well. I think to this day, the tweet asking for any information on the commoner format of Flesh and Blood has like the most replies or mentions of anything we've ever put out.
Yeah, it turns out when you have a small but dedicated group of players, they're just going to find any and every mention of their preferred format. So
crazy how that works.
Yeah.
Anyone hear of Pauper Commander?
That sounds like a great idea. Is that trademarked or anything yet?
We should do a podcast about that. This has been fantastic. As we've kind of covered throughout this, Julian and I have been getting a little into Flesh and Blood as a whole. So learning that there are more accessible options out there, more interesting things that align with our current desires for more complex formats or budget friendly and all of that. Commoner seems like a really cool place to start, or find a local game store that has as generous people to give out free Commoner decks to everyone, and do that. But any way you can kind of interact with the game, this is a really cool and refreshing game system that is very fun to play. And I think the new set comes out in March. I think it's Outlanders.
Sounds right.
And it introduces at least 4 new heroes and looks super fun. New Blitz decks coming as well that are largely commons if you want to jumpstart into Commoner for like $15, which is crazy when you think about it price-wise. That is super helpful. But on TCG Player, our sponsor, you can probably get one for half of that.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, well, that's going to do it. But we encourage you guys to check out Flesh and Blood. Remember that there are other ways to enjoy the Pauper format, the Pauper format in spirit, if you will.
The multiverse of Pauper formats, really.
Oh, yeah.
Pauper
true.
multiverse. Something. Julian, make it a title.
The Pultiverse.
The multiverse. That sounds like
God.
poultry. That sounds like chickens from all dimensions.
You know what it sounds like? It sounds like we should maybe end this podcast and
yeah.
see the listeners in the next one.
This is a unofficial After Dark. It's time to go to bed, apparently.
Yeah, so one of us is wasted on margaritas, and it's not me.
Heyo.